A lot of us go around feeling quite enraged, angry privately about the way that our love lives have gone. My task today is to turn that anger into sadness. If we manage to turn rage into grief, we will have made psychological progress. What is love? Ultimately, love, I believe, is something, first of all, there's a distinction between loving and being loved. We all start off in life by knowing a lot about being loved. Being loved is the fun bit. That's when somebody brings you something on a tray and asks you how your day at school went, etc. And we grow up thinking that that is what's going to happen in an adult relationship. We can be forgiven for that. It's an understandable mistake, but it's a very tragic mistake, and it leads us not to pay attention to the other side of the equation, which is to love. And what does it really mean to love? To love, ultimately, is to have the willingness to interpret someone's, on the surface, not very appealing behavior in order to find more benevolent reasons why it may be unfolding. In other words, to love someone is to apply charity and generosity of interpretation. Most of us are in dire need of love, because actually we need to have some slack cut for us, because our behavior is often so tricky that if we don't do this, we wouldn't get through any kind of relationship. But we're not used to thinking that that is the core of what love is. The core of what love is the willingness to interpret another's behavior.
We moved from a model of relationships that were organized around duty and rules and obligations to a model of relationships that are steeped in options and in choices. We have unprecedented choices about anything. All the big decisions, in effect, at this moment are on us. The burdens of the self have never been heavier. We need to decide what we want to do. We need to decide where we want to live. We need to decide if we are happy. We need to decide if we are happy enough and if we could be happier. We no longer divorce because we are unhappy and miserable. We often actually separate because we could be happier. All of those decisions used to be quite codified for us. As a result, we have massive choices and we have unprecedented uncertainty and self-doubt plaguing us with a little tyranny in the back of us all the time. How do I know? How do I know this is the right thing? How do I know this is the right choice? How do I know this is the one?
It's very hard to judge our own styles. We all have moments of giving, of taking, and of matching. Your style is how you treat most of the people most of the time. And most of us overestimate our own generosity. Some of that is ego, right? We want to see ourselves as givers. And some of that is just plain information. So when psychologists ask couples who are married to go into separate rooms and estimate the total percent of work that they are personally responsible for in their marriage, each member of the couple will add up an estimate for themselves, put them together, 3 out of 4 couples add up to over 100%. Someone's lying, and it's usually the man. When you ask why, it turns out that on average, people simply know more about their own giving than they do about their spouses. So when asked, well, what are all the things you contributed to your marriage? People can come up with about 11 things on average. Whereas when they're asked about their spouse's contributions, they can only come up with 8. Right? You were there when you walked the dog and drove the kids to school and took out the garbage. By definition, you're not present for every act of giving that any other person does. So we all know more about our own generosity than others.
One of the reasons why love is so tricky for us is that it requires us to do something we really don't want to do, which is to approach another human being and say, I need you. I wouldn't really survive without you. I am vulnerable before you. And there's a very strong impulse in all of us to be strong and to be well defended and not to reveal our vulnerability to another person. Psychologists talk of 2 patterns of response that tend to crop up in people whenever there's a danger of needing to be extremely vulnerable, dangerously vulnerable, and exposed to another person. The first response is to get what psychologists call anxiously attached. This is attachment theory, some of you may know. So when you are anxiously attached to somebody, rather than saying, I need you, I depend on you, you start to get very procedural. You say, you're 10 minutes late, or I think the bin bags need to be taken out, or you start to get strict when actually what you want to do is to ask a very poignant question, do you still care about me?
One of the things that the digital and the technologies has created for us is that it has offered us a situation that is often called stable ambiguity. It's probably one of the most interesting positions at this moment. In stable ambiguity, I have a way of staying connected, but not too much that I lose my freedom, and just enough that I don't feel completely alone. The words for stable ambiguity have to do with icing and simmering. And then the big level of closure, of diminishment of accountability is ghosting. Ghosting, people have always been rejected, but there is a way today in which I can be 1 minute with you, around 300 texts back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, with all the shots up in my brain that I need to, and then 1 minute I'm erased, deleted. And this tension between how disposable we feel, how commodified we often are, how much we look for partners the way we apply for jobs, and at the same time, a desperate need to still feel that we matter, that we are seen, that we can have our page liked and stuff like that. It's these two tensions that we are experiencing today. We have never felt as small and never wanted to feel as big.
And most of us are appalling teachers. Most of us teach when we're tired, when we're frightened. What are we frightened of? We're frightened we've married an idiot. And because we're so frightened, we start screaming at them. You've got to understand. And the thing is that unfortunately, by the time you've started to humiliate the person you want to understand something, lesson over. You will never get anyone to understand what you want them to understand so long as you make them feel small. In order to teach well, you need to be relaxed. You need to accept that maybe your partner won't understand. And also, you need a culture within a couple that two people are going to need to teach each other and therefore also learn from one another. And this brings me to the next reason why you're going to have a very unhappy relationship, probably. And that is because you probably believe that when somebody tries to tell you something about yourself that's a little ticklish and a little uncomfortable, they are attacking you. They're not. They're trying to make you into a better person. And we don't tend to believe that this has a role in love. We tend to believe that true love means accepting the whole of us. It doesn't. No one should accept the whole of us. We're appalling. You really want the whole of you accepted? No, that's not love.
I go back to say it is the quality of our relationships that determines the quality of our lives. Your relationships are your story. Write often and edit well.